I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, if I was 40, 45, God willing, one day I'm sitting in my house with my future family and I look back on my life and I asked myself what I wanted to get out of life and what choices I made. And I said, I really thought to myself, you know, is this something I'm going to regret not doing? And that question eventually over time, through many more months, that's not where I made up my mind, but many, many months later, with that in the back of my mind, one day I just decided that the fear of staying, the fear of regretting it, the fear of not taking that chance was actually more frightening than the fear of going.
All right. Well, today I have my dear friend Theo Babajooni with me joining me. Theo, part of the reason why I wanted to have you come in and speak, especially as my first episode, is that we have some incredible conversations together about
Indeed, we do.
life purpose, about finding our direction, about navigating different struggles, and might as well publicize that for the world to hear because maybe it could help one or two people.
Can't lie, it's almost as if this has been in the making for many, many months. So I'm really glad to be here and be a part of this first episode. It's a big honor, and I'm just looking forward to having a great conversation and I guess finally being able to go back and listen to it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here. Theo flew into Boulder this morning, and is going to be spending the last Shabbat in Boulder with our community before he flies off to Israel to join the IDF. And Theo, I know this has been a big dream of yours. So why don't you tell me where that dream began and what made you decide to take that next step to pursue it?
That is a great question. It's a very personal question, obviously, and there's a couple ways I can answer it. There's a long story, and there's a short story. I'll start off with the short story. Um, to sum it up, it just feels like something I have to do. It feels like a calling. The first time I've ever had my heart speak to me, so to say. Those kinds of things I never understood. Whenever I heard someone say, I have a calling, I had a voice in my head, I felt something speaking to me. I never understood what that used to mean until I felt this voice in my head telling me, you got to go to Israel for a little bit, you got to join the army. So, like I said, simply put, it just feels like something I have to do before I move on in my life, in my youth. Um, but it goes back a lot farther. I would say the first time I really thought about this was in 10th grade. I spent a 4 month semester program in Israel. This lovely program that my high school did called Tiferet through high school in Israel at Mosenson High School in Hod HaSharon in Israel. I spent 4 months there. My second time in the country, but my first time spending a tremendous amount of time in Israel. I would say really connecting, really being able to open my mind, my heart to the place instead of just being there for a 10-day vacation. And I would say that was one of the first times that I really thought about it. And it's kind of somber. It started when one day we went to Har Herzl, which for those that don't know, that's the military cemetery in Jerusalem that overlooks kind of the hills, and it's full of many graves. You'll find people like Yitzhak Rabin, Zev Jabotinsky, everyone, all the way to your common Israeli soldier who's buried there, and there are many of those. And um, I would say for a lot of diaspora Jews who really aren't familiar with the history of Israel, don't really see what the human cost looks like. Going to Har Herzl and seeing all the young graves, and you read those tombstones and you read the ages, and you just think that could have been me. And that was the thought I had. Both my parents fled Iran shortly following or before the revolution to seek a better life. And my mom, actually, coincidentally, the first place she went was Israel for 6 months before emigrating to the UK and then coming to the US eventually. But she has family members who went from Iran, went to Israel, uh, and have family members that I've never met. So when I see the sacrifice, when I see that, you know, it really moved me because I thought of Israel at the time, a place where I get to go on vacation, I get to spend a nice 4 months, you know what I mean, like traveling, enjoying, shalvata for lack of a better term, all these things. And at that point, it really hit me in a really poignant way that there's more to this than just that. And it just struck me that there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of people that had to sacrifice a lot, and I just had this thought, why them and not me? And that was a seed that was planted, and it's a little sapling that would grow, you could say, over the years. Um, And eventually, as I got older, as I went through college, studied business, had a good time in college, but I felt like I was missing something. So I started thinking about contemplating joining the army after college. Now, keep in mind, this was before October 7th. This was before the entire landscape drastically changed. And I thought it would be something that I could do to add meaning, purpose to my life, to connect with Israel, to get something greater. And then October 7th happened, and that really just changed a lot of my calculus. For many Jews around the world that witnessed it from afar, it shook all of us. It rocked us in many different ways. And I just remember feeling fear and confusion because I was building up this idea, I was building up this confidence to go to the army, something that, by the way, not supported by my parents, my family really struggled to accept. So at the time, I lacked the confidence too. So it was really difficult. But following October 7th, it really sent me into a dark place in terms of that decision. I was thinking, you know, could I really do this? Is this what I was romanticizing? Uh, I was like, what if that was me? What if I was on that training base? And I ran away from the idea for a while. And but I talked to many good friends. I got a lot of good advice, and I looked inward. And the way I like to think about it is, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, if I was 40, 45, God willing, one day I'm sitting in my house with my future family, and I look back on my life, and I ask myself what I wanted to get out of life and what choices I made. And I really thought to myself, you know, is this something I'm going to regret not doing? And that question eventually, over time, through many more months, that's not where I made up my mind, but many, many months later, with that in the back of my mind, one day I just decided that the fear of staying, the fear of regretting it, the fear of not taking that chance was actually more frightening than the fear of going. And when I hit that point, I gained the confidence to eventually go through and follow through on my dream and start the paperwork. So,
And in 1 month time, you will be on a flight to Israel.
on 1 month time, February 10th, I will be on a flight.
I think back to when we were in Israel together on Birthright 2 summers ago. We went to Har Herzl, and I'd never been there. You probably had been there before, but we went this time with other Israeli soldiers who not only shared stories of people they knew, but also experiences that they had had in combat. And I had been in Israel also as a kid, as a little kid. But when you go there and you experience that reality, that side of it, it changes it. Like you said, it's not just a vacation spot. You really feel the weight of the sacrifice. You can feel it in that cemetery in particular. Um, and especially after October 7th. I mean, I went and I visited Har Herzl last summer, and it was a completely different place. You're looking for names of friends and friends of friends, and it's a different reality. So I think that you have an incredibly powerful why. And I'm going to come back to this quote a lot. And it was originally said by Nietzsche, but used a lot by Dr. Viktor Frankl. And it's that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how, right? The message is that the person who has an underlying reason for their survival or for the accomplishment of their mission or their goal in some way can withstand any difficulties or challenges that may come in their way. And this is great when you're talking about building a business, right? Where you have to be rooted in your why because there'll be financial challenges and other challenges to overcome when you're trying to get things going. But this becomes a different type of reality and carries a new weight when you're talking about um, literal life and bearing any how to survive. Um, so I don't know if you've heard that quote before.
No, I've not. But there's a good chance you sprinkled it at one point in our conversations. But
Likely,
likely.
likely.
Um, yeah, honestly, I think that kind of concept of having that grounding reason, that grounding purpose is something that I've obviously meditated on because this experience that I'm gonna embark on is unlike anything I've done. I mean, it's not normal. Like, to put it bluntly, it's not normal for diaspora Jews to enlist in military service. Um, I can't say I've had too many experiences in my life similar to that. I mean, on that 10th grade program, we actually did do Gadna, which is, kind of like a 4-day stint on an army base meant for kids on programs and tourists, not tourists, but it's kind of meant to expose people, and also younger Israeli kids, kind of to expose them to the army. And that was the most, that was the only prior experience I'd had, which was relatively positive. but it doesn't really compare to the real thing. Um, and luckily, I've had a great cohort of former Israeli soldiers, current soldiers, lone soldiers. I've really kind of scoured the earth, searching for people just willing to listen to me and heed my uh, like just to listen, because coming from a place where not too many people make this choice, it can feel very alienating and you can sound very foreign. I've had a lot of people give me the crazy eye, and I understand it honestly. But I've been lucky to have friends and people who have just spoken to me honestly, just told me the truth. Um, in fact, this summer, I visited a friend of mine who was he's in Shirion. He's a tank commander, and he was just finishing up uh, one of his breaks before going back into service. And had a short conversation with him. I won't get too into it, but I had to face people that had seen things. Had been in un unimaginable circumstances. People my age, um, and I had to work up the nerve to just try to ask him how he was doing. Because here I was having the time of my life. Like we were volunteering that summer. Although it was during wartime, but it's very humbling to be in the presence of someone who's kind of had that courage and shown that courage. But I've just been very lucky to meet a lot of people who have been great resources, who have lent an ear to listen, and I don't think without that community I would be able to have the confidence, honestly, to make the decision.
Well, that's amazing, Achi, brother. And you brought it up. I want to go into that a little bit. Karen Ben Zimra. Karen Ben Zimra is the kibbutz that Theo and I ventured out to this summer in the middle of the tension going on in northern Israel, in the Upper Galil and the Golan, with Hezbollah rockets raining over the skies and the Iron Dome active all hours of the day and night. And you and I decided to stray from the path of, cookie cutter volunteer work. We took a bus and then we found a ride from a doctor, found our way up on some small kibbutz named Karen Ben Zimra, living with a family in their safe room, sleeping in their safe room and picking cherries for them for a week. And so I don't know about you. I mean, I do know because we've talked about it a lot, but that was the highlight of my summer. It's one of the most profound experiences I've had because it's the underlying behind the scenes of what you don't see when you're a tourist and you don't see it on the internet. It's just a normal working family trying to make a living when their livelihood is at stake.
Yeah, I agree. It was honestly it was a really powerful experience to see what the North was like because, um, understandably so, the situation in the South in Gaza following 10/7 got a lot of media coverage, a lot of attention. And during that time, it was often easy to forget about what was happening in the North, where a day after, practically, you have Hezbollah joining in and launching just countless rocket attacks on the north of Israel, displacing like up to, I think, 60,000 people from their homes. And what was really crazy about our experience is we got to go to one place where certain families just do not have the option to evacuate because, like you said, they have a livelihood. They're farmers. They have crops to cultivate and to sell, and they have workers to pay and children to feed and to send to school. Um, and just kind of seeing the spirit of these people, this community that took us in during such an uncertain time was really moving in a lot of ways, and I think it added a lot to our trip, honestly.
It did. I remember going into it, I was watching the skies as we were driving down through the windy forest of Tzfat, and roads were closed and whatever. And I remember just feeling an immense fear. It was, I could feel it looming over my head because you don't know what could happen at any moment. Um, but the second we got there, it all kind of went away. The family sent um, their kids and a little ATV to come pick us up from the gate. We went and they made us a beautiful meal. And yeah, during the time when we were on the fields picking cherries, we heard rocket fire above, we heard planes, and we heard the Iron Dome going off. I remember one time we had to kind of run back into the shelter because it was very close by. But what did we do to, keep ourselves busy and keep our minds sharp and away from fear? I remember we turned on podcasts and we were in the middle of the cherry farm,
Audiobooks.
audiobooks. I think we listened to Maimonides' Guide to the Perplexed. And when
Yes.
that was too complicated for us, we switched to Iron John by Robert Bly. And so that's a book that had a lot of impact on me. I know it's had impact on you. What are some of your takeaways from what you remember?
So, Iron John, coincidentally, like you said, honestly, I feel like I was meant to listen to it in that place at that time, because I was still deep in contemplation about the idea to go to the army, or at least just spend time in Israel in my youth. It's like honestly one of the main things I've been grappling with, and obviously I'm going through with it now. But a big part of that book, to give you the extreme cliff notes, I'm sure you could do it better than I can. It's like roughly a story about a boy meeting this wild man. The wild man kind of being an extended metaphor for kind of man unleashing himself in independence and through grit and determination and setting off to do what he wants to do in a world that may often kind of restrict you and hold back your passion and kind of put things in front of you to stop you from doing, following your heart, essentially, following your instincts. And a big part of that key in that story is the wild man instructs the boy that he has to go and he has to take the key from under his mother's bed. And this key unlocks the cage to release the wild man. And I'm sure many other sons of nervous Jewish mothers can relate when I thought about the task of having to go get that key from under my mom's pillow. Um, and by that, I mean pretty much negotiating, talking through with my parents the fact that I was serious about that,
About
uh,
joining the
about
IDF
joining the
and leaving
army.
home. Yeah.
Exactly. All of those things. And that chapter was specifically impactful because it did make me realize at some point it's something you got to take. It's not something you can ask for. Now, granted, I believe in obviously being as respectful and civil and understanding and empathetic, when you're telling your parents you want to go do something like this, something with inherent danger and uncertainty. But I realized I spent a lot of time thinking about it in my own head, not taking action, letting the doubts of others cloud my ambition, honestly. But that Iron John, that chapter right there, what I took from that is that it's in my hands. It's something I can do. It's something I have to, in a sense, take for myself. Um, and honestly, having never made such a big life decision, it was something I wasn't used to doing. This level of agency with such, a consequential decision. But you know, it's it's really rewarding and freeing to see that you can take your life in a direction that you want to take it. Up until now, I'm 23, you're 22. At this age, as you graduate college, as you're nearing the end of college, your entire life has pretty much been laid out for you at this point. You go to school, you go to college, you spend time in the summers doing things, you go to sports practice, whatever, and then college ends, right? For the most part, if you're taking that traditional route, and then you're really set free. And it's very daunting, and it's very daunting to me.
It is. And I'm in your shoes or where you were a year ago, about to graduate this May. And, you've kind of found your direction. And if you take the traditional path, college seems like you go from entire life of structure where from the second you learn to talk, practically you've been put in school and you follow the school system and you emerge at the age of 22 if you do college with a degree and they say go to more school or, go pave your own path. So you're paving your own path. And in the story, the boy, he steals the key from under his mother's pillow, and he goes to the cage with a wild man representing the inner wild person, the inner wild beast of sorts, in a positive way that we each have inside of us that we can either suppress and refuse to unlock or release from the cage and let run free. And if we do so, it comes with risks of uncertainty. But again, you could live with a life of regret, leaving him locked up in that cage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you that wild man, he grabs on the bars of that cage and he shakes it.
He
And he lets you know.
shakes it.
And
Yeah.
for those maybe like thinking that, the wild man, it's got to be some instinct to lead you to macho things like joining the army or it's not. Like I really do believe that wild man is whenever your gut is telling you, whatever you think your gut is, your instinct, that inner voice, right? That inner conscious. Whenever that voice tells you to do something uncomfortable, something that you know will take you out of your comfort zone, place you in uncertainty. That's what I think that wild man instinct is. So whether, someone's debating on whether or not they want to quit their job, move to a new company, quit their job, start their own company, go across the country for college, go to a place they've never been before. I think all of those things all relate kind of to that inner instinct, to that inner call to kind of do something that'll probably bring the best out of you, but it probably also scares the hell out of you.
It probably scares the hell out of you. But the point is, like you said, and I'm glad you said it, it doesn't mean enlisting, right? That's what your calling was. So you and I have both been reading or starting to read the book Gates of Trust, in Hebrew, Shara Bitachon. And the chapter that I read this week talks about how each individual person has a specific mission that they have to fulfill, a specific calling that they have to listen to and follow. And it's based off of what their personality is like, it's based off of what they were put here to do. And so for some people who are more physically gifted, right, it may be using your body to fulfill that mission in some way, whether it's being a combat soldier, or a wrestler or an athlete or whatever that is, or working in construction. It really is personal to you. For some people, it's their intellect, right? It's working with computers, it's analyzing, it's looking at data. For others, it's their heart, it's their emotions, it's using their mind and their heart together, to help others. And so it really depends on who you are and what gift you've been given, how you're going to pursue it, and what your aim is in life. And so the point is exactly that we've all been given different sets of strengths, different sets of gifts, and whatever that is, we have to listen to. We have to be in tune with ourselves and ask ourselves, genuinely, am I doing something that really brings out the most of what I have to offer? Because if you're not only are you doing a disservice to yourself, you're doing a disservice to all of those around you who can benefit from what you have to offer. Seriously, I mean, a lot of people, and myself included, get so caught up in trying to succeed, and we're driven in a world of success and money, and it's important. The
Absolutely.
grind and the academic life and pursuing financial means is important, but it has to come when you're centered and you're rooted in your deepest purpose.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. I could not agree more. I would say I come from a community where there are a lot of pressures, a lot of expectations around that, around championing the pursuit of, a certain lifestyle, of certain job titles, of certain positions of status, for the sake of acquiring certain types of houses and all of that kind of stuff. And the thing is, it's not all pointless. It's not, completely nihilistic. I mean, there is an element of, when you pursue, when you make money, when you create a good livelihood, you invite comfort. You don't have to worry about a lot of things, medical bills, education. You can travel, you can experience beautiful things. I think all of that really is worthwhile.
Absolutely.
My issue that I came to bear with is that I don't think there's enough of a balance. I don't think there's enough of emphasis in my community in particular of encouraging young people to get in touch with what they think their purpose might be, what actually makes them happy, what they think about in their free time, what makes them smile when they're having a bad day. And um, I've kind of seen what it can do to some people when they sacrifice that just for their jobs to work insane hours, and still do well for themselves. But I think it takes a toll on the soul, unintentional pun. Um, and for whatever reason, I hit a point where I wasn't prepared to do that. And it caused me a lot of trouble, caused me a lot of stress, a lot of contemplation. Um, but I'm honestly glad I listened to it. I'm glad I heeded that instinct I had. I have no regrets, at least at this point. And God willing, I have none. I try not to live with regrets. I really do like the quote. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it might be it actually might be some sort of like Buddhist adage, but There are no mistakes in life, only lessons. And if they come back around, it's just a lesson being taught again and again until you figure it out. And that's something that's helped me a lot because I feel like it's really easy to get so self-deprecating when you mess up. But like we're all going through life the first time. I've never been 23 and graduating college. You've never been 22 and finishing up college. Sure, especially if you don't have a role model either, but like, doesn't matter how much reference material you have. Each and every single one of us is going through everything we're going through and just trying to figure it out. And um, I think giving yourself grace with that, especially as we grow, especially as we encounter all these different expectations and what people want from us, I think it's good sometimes to actually stop and listen to yourself. And that's something I've been trying to keep up with and stay consistent with doing.
I like what you said about money and resources being a tool, right? Where it's absolutely important that you make a living to sustain your family and sustain, all of your life endeavors and vacation, and that stuff's important. But money doesn't buy happiness, as we're told since we were children. But it can give you a certain degree of freedom, right? And so it's important to have that, but it's important not to let money and status and whatever you may be pursuing become the end in
Mm.
and of itself, right? It can be a means to achieve freedom. It can be a means to serve others. It can be a means to give charity, tzedakah. And that's when you elevate the mundane, um, which is a quote that you love to talk about with Judaism.
It's a great concept.
And it's a great concept. I mean, think about all of the ways that we can elevate the mundane on a day to day basis. You have a meal in front of you, um, right? And you're grateful for it. And you say a blessing over it. And just the simple act alone takes the food and puts it on a higher level. You've elevated what is seemingly mundane.
Yeah, it's true. Um, and we find that all over our tradition, I guess. And I'm not someone who's, as you know, I'm not very religious, but I like to say I'm getting more in touch with it the older I get. But you think about all the things that like, oh, you got to say blessing for that. You got to say this for that, and you're like wondering why. Why can't I just go about my day? Why can't I just wake up in the morning? Honestly, I think Modani is one of my favorite examples of this. In the morning, you're supposed to say Modani when you wake up, and you thank God for returning your soul to your body every single day. And if you really think about it, waking up in the morning is concurrently one of the most mundane things because it happens every day. And most of the time, you have no control over it. But at the same time, it's also one of the most powerful, insane blessings. You get to wake up another day. Um, and when you just kind of start extending that, that's what, in my opinion, helped me build my gratitude in life. And that was something that honestly helped me in my darkest times. Was learning to really appreciate. I mean, this is universal. We say, it's all about the little things in life. And I just think in Judaism we kind of have it sprinkled in the tradition for us to kind of learn. But when you learn to appreciate those little things, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what else do we really have?
Little things that aren't actually little things. I
Right.
mean, the fact that you went to bed, right? Your consciousness drifted off somewhere unknown, a state of not being awake, not being conscious, and then somehow
Sleep is wild.
your body wakes back up. That's no small thing. That's no appreciating the little things. I mean, you've been given another day of life. Um, and I know that may sound cliche.
Right.
People wake up and they're like, well, like, I don't really care to go and make a whole fuss out of it. I'm just going to continue with my day. And that's so fine. But to add that extra layer of gratitude, I mean, modani is an act of submission, it's an act of surrender. It's saying the moment that you realize that your soul is in your body, when you've gained consciousness, you are automatically, the moment you open your eyes, surrendering yourself to some sort of higher purpose, higher cause. Call it what you want. Call it God, call it the universe, call it life, call it nature. Insert your, higher purpose here. But when you approach your day like that, I mean, in your brain automatically, the first thing that you think about and that you do in the morning will influence the rest of your day. Um, if that isn't godly, I don't know what is.
I've been opening up my phone and, you know, I would say messing up that part of my day for the most part. That's a
It
habit I'm trying to
happens.
work on.
Me too. It happens.
But yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And like that's why it's so important. That's why it's really important to be intentional, I think. I think when I think about the seasons I've had in life, happier seasons, sadder seasons, highs and lows, I can almost certainly say that the lower parts were always marked by less intention about what I was doing, what I was thinking, what I was eating, who I was seeing, how I was spending my time. And I could definitely say all of the high points came with with much more intention. I was actively thinking and choosing about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, who I wanted to spend my time with, making better choices, choices that nothing was stopping me from making earlier. It was simply like whether or not I made the distinction to make that choice. Um, and I think that's something that's really helped me, I'd say honestly, become a happier person. Realizing that, yeah, sure, you could just say, I woke up another day. Cool, I'm just eating food, like whatever. I have to. Oh, I'm just drinking water. But I've learned that when you don't take the effort, because you do have to make an effort to do it, when you don't make that effort to find a way to appreciate the beauty in all these little things, you'll find yourself searching for that big, you know, satisfying point of happiness, that rush of dopamine. You're waiting for, I don't know, an acceptance letter into a dream school or a new car or something insane. And then you realize you spent every day waiting for something that's not coming when all you need to experience happiness throughout the day are those little things. And I don't know, I've been really vibing with that way of looking at life.
Well, Theo, my brother, I want to end by addressing a question that I'm going to be asking on this podcast. It's in the title, Shells and Shadows, right?
Yeah, I was wondering what the name of this whole podcast
Yeah.
was.
So I'm going to ask you two different questions just to end this off. And I want you to give a little bit of advice to maybe some younger men or women who may be in your position or the position you were in a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years ago, whatever it may be.
Okay.
First being, there's this idea of klipa. Klipa, it means shell. And
Mm.
it's a shell that is covering and hiding underneath it light. And maybe it's the light of your soul or of anything, really. Our world is surrounded by a lot of darkness, and underneath it is very much light. And it's about finding the light and looking deeper and peeling back the layers. So, um, give me a moment in your life where you've peeled back the layers of yourself to reveal your light underneath.
Wow, that's awesome. I was not expecting that when you told me the name of the podcast. I would say Uh, this immediately reminds me of my sophomore year of college. This was my first year of college on campus. My first year of school was all online during COVID, which for many people, very much including myself, was a really rough time. It was not for me. Being at home, online classes, lack of social life, all of that. So my first year of college, where I was actually at school in a dorm, trying to feel like a normal college kid, um, that was a period of time where I was kind of transitioning out of what I would call one of the darkest years of my life, which was that year and a half or year during COVID. And I was trying to pick myself up uh, and try and make the most of the situation I was in because I was not happy. I was very uninspired. I was timid. I wasn't being social. I kind of lost that side of myself. Um, and I was in a shell. Quite literally, I was in a shell. I stopped myself from going to social activities. I stopped myself from pursuing my classes the best I could. But I remember one evening I was out and I went to LMU. It's a beautiful campus. We have a lovely view, the Bluff, very famous. Um, and you can just see all of Los Angeles and these like glowing, beautiful orange sunsets almost every day. And I remember looking at this view as I often would, and just contemplating, life. Pretty much asking myself, like, I need to get out of this shell. I need to get out of this darkness. Um, and one of those nights, I looked out and I got really emotional, and I realized Like, no one's coming to get me. Like, nothing's going to change this. Nothing's going to make college fun. Nothing's going to make me a better student. Nothing's going to get me to go to the gym every day. I don't know what I'm waiting for. And I realized I just had to start with myself every day and not look back because I'm tired of this. I'm honestly tired of this. And from then, I slowly started building up, I would say, revealing that light. I started being more social. I started making sure I was disciplined on going to the gym, moving my body, getting sunlight, all these things. And I would say that is a time where, yeah, I would say I removed myself from that shell. And you do have to remove yourself from it. I used to think, oh, I'll grow up and the shell will come off. You know, I'll mature enough. I'll grow out of it. And I guess that taught me that you kind of don't. You kind of have to. You have to do it yourself. And I would say after that, I started radiating and receiving a lot more light in my life once I made that conscious decision.
Wow. What you said, no one's coming to save me. That's that's very scary, but it puts all of the power back in your hands. The second part of shells and shadows is shadows, and you touched on it briefly. Um, but the difference between shells and shadows is whereas a shell conceals something, a light that you possess inside, right? And it puts up an illusion. A shadow is something we tuck away. We don't allow to be seen by ourselves as well. So it may be something within us, a quality we have, just an overall darkness that we have inside of us that we don't show to the world, something that we bury deep inside of us. And if we're unlucky, can go so deep into our unconscious that we're unaware of it entirely. And so, what is a moment where you've had to look at your own shadow side? Not necessarily fight it, but really let it come into you and let it become something you're aware of and feel the pain of it and move forward and integrate.
Wow. Um, Give me a moment. I'll think about that.
Sure.
Um, so
And if you want,
yeah,
I can share first.
I
If you
would
want,
honestly love
if
to
you
hear
want an
your.
idea.
Yeah, please.
Okay, sure. So for me, I had a moment in my life where I had to do what's called shadow work. And it's where you look at all of these pieces that you may have been ignoring and that have been disruptive because you just can't make the space to reconcile with them and work through them. Um, when I was 16 years old, I went to a residential treatment center in southern Utah. I had been harboring shadows within me from my time living in Israel. And when I came to the US, I quickly understood what the statement, wherever you go, there you are, meant. Wherever you go, your problems, but also your strengths follow you. And I spent a good year um, doing shadow work and really through writing and through therapy and other ways and outlets. I started working out and meditating, which really helped me. But I had to really look at myself and take inventory, as they say in um, Narcotics Anonymous. I was really exposed to the whole 12-step program, even though that's not what I was there for myself. Um, and I had gone to, NA meetings, AA meetings with some of the people I was with. And it was other shadow work being done in the form of working through addiction. Because addiction manifests itself when a shadow is so deeply buried that it needs to come out in some way. And it can come out through alcoholism and substance abuse. And so it was a year of shadow work and not easy work, but I really enjoy having these conversations because the more we can talk about the shadow and integrate into ourselves, the more we can be real with people. If we're only showing ourselves in some small capacity to the people around us, to the world, then we're really limiting what we let other people see. We're not letting anyone in,
Well, thank you for sharing that with me.
of
I
course.
didn't know some of those things. Wow. Um, then I guess in that case, that makes more sense now.
Okay.
I would say I've been in a period where I've been facing my shadows up until very recently with making this decision to go to Israel. And that shadow, that kind of negative side of myself, um, I think really manifested in um, my insecurity about the direction of my life. I mean, this was like an existential anxiety that I had for years on end. College gives a lot of people the direction. For me, I honestly felt like I was just biding my time. Not to say I didn't learn things or meet great people or teachers or make memories, but I really felt like I was biding my time. And as my final year of college was wrapping up, it's when it really hit me one day that I was simply biding my time. I wasn't moving with any intentionality. And that's the worst thing you can do when you have something eating away at you is when you leave it alone, when you don't do anything to address it. And this caused inordinate amounts of insecurity for me. I felt like I couldn't look at myself in the mirror, honestly, sometimes when I was looking at my peers who were applying to grad school, following their dreams, moving across the world or the country for jobs. And I really compared myself. And when they say comparison is the thief of joy, they're absolutely right. Um, and I would say I only really faced that shadow in the past several months when it came to solidifying my decision and trusting my gut, as difficult as it may have been to actually own what I know I want to do at this point in my life. Um, and that's something that gave me a lot of peace at the end. But I would say that shadow of insecurity, of self doubt, lack of direction, lack of purpose, something that ate away at me until honestly very recently. Uh, and I'm sure the people in my life could notice that at the time. Um, and yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Well, I'm sure other people who just heard your story can benefit greatly and hopefully gain some insight and some direction into how to unlock the wild man, how to pursue what is feared, knowing that not pursuing it brings greater fear. And so
Absolutely.
I wish you the best of luck. You and I will be in touch, obviously. And I'm just looking forward to spending one last Shabbat with you in Boulder before you go off on this new journey.
As am
So,
I. Couldn't ask to be in a better place with better people. So thank you for
amen.
having me.
Of course, my brother.
Thank you.